You know, a lot has changed in the last 11 to 12 years that I have been in the industry. I mean, the barrier of entry has never been lower. The tools have never been better or more inexpensive. There's never been more opportunities. There's never been more libraries. There's never been more awareness of production and library music. And yet, the royalties kind of have never been lower. So today I welcome Jeff LaPlante back to the podcast, and we're going to talk about what's changed in production and library music over the last decade or so, and what you need to be doing to stand out in an ever increasingly crowded market on episode 253 of the 52 Qs podcast. What is happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Qs podcast, your weekly insight into the world of library and production music. My name is Dave Croft, and not only am I a composer, I am also a professor of music production, and it is so good to be with you here today, whether you are watching on YouTube or listening to the audio on the go. Also, a huge word of thanks to our family and friends subscribers who are composers just like you, looking to write better music and find success in the sync music industry. And 52 Qs is there to help with workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, live streams, pitching to real music libraries, an amazing community, and a ton more. If you want to join us, you can head over to 52qs.com. It is free to join, and subscription tiers are very, very reasonably priced. We'd love to have you. So today, I am glad to welcome back to the podcast our mentor co-host, Jeff LaPlante, and we're going to be talking about how the industry has changed in the years that we've been in the industry. But first, how are you doing, Jeff, man? How's your week been?
Doing great. My week has been good. First week back at school. The kids are getting back into the swing of things. We got some our mid-year testing coming up, so gotta get them away from that vacation mentality. So things are going well.
You know, you mentioned the other day that you teach second grade, and Shannon and I watch Abbott Elementary. Have you seen the show?
I have seen a few episodes. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
How accurate is it? Is it kind of like you know how Scrubs is a sitcom that doctors find like really realistic, even though it's a comedy? Is Abbott Elementary, is there some truth to that in that
Yes,
show?
there's some painful truths in that show. I've only watched a little bit of the first season, and it was almost like uncomfortable to watch because some of the things are so real.
Like too close, too real.
No.
Anyway, I was thinking about that last week. Like, hey man, I wonder if you watch Abbott Elementary. It's one of our favorites. So what have you been up to this week? As far as what are you writing? I know it's only been a few days since we actually recorded our last episode. But what have you been up to this week?
Yeah, so I ended up submitting 3 rock cues for the March Madness brief for the briefing room at 52 Qs, and also I put together a Reel Crafter reel to pitch to one of my newer libraries that I just started working with a couple months ago, and I want to definitely make them a priority this year. So I loaded them up with 10 cues, some songs with Alora and some tension cues and some hip hop cues. So I just sent those off. Hopefully they'll get accepted, and if not, they'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, right on, man, right on. You know, a couple of weeks ago, Shannon and I talked about our years, and this for us both is the year of alignment. Do you have a year, and do you do that kind of thing for the year?
Yeah, so all the cues that I write for each year go on a separate iTunes playlist that I make, and every year I give the playlist a name. I think 2022 was Focus, 2023 was Determination, I think 2024 was it's Dedication, something like that. This is the year of achievement. So that's right what on. I labeled it. Yeah.
Very, very good. Very good. Yeah. And listener and viewer, what's your year? Let us know in the comments. What have you dubbed 2026 as your year of? As far as what I'm into, I am just chipping away at this indie pop brief, this uplifting indie pop. I was working on it earlier today, and my fingers, man, going from like ukulele to electric guitar to acoustic guitar to bass. It's a real mental workout, but it's also a finger workout. And does that ever go away where it just kind of stops hurting? I'm assuming it does.
Well,
but
I'm loving my new bass, by the way. That I got
yeah,
brand new Ibanez 5-string. The sound I'm getting from it is amazing. Whenever I go from bass back to my guitar just feels so much smaller and lighter, and it makes me play my guitar like faster and better. So it's pretty cool. In terms of like getting used to a new instrument, like bass is really tough on the fingers, but you definitely get used to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Before I switched to the flat wounds, those round wounds were absolutely chewing my fingers up, especially because I'm still a little soft, you're right, here on my fingertips. And I play a lot of like one string things, and I'll slide up and down the string. And it was, especially on the side of my middle finger, it was just absolutely shredding it. But thankfully, the flat wounds have solved that. The flat wounds are so silky smooth, man.
Oh, good.
They feel great. Kind of a vintage vibe to it, especially on a J bass, a jazz bass. Can I say J bass? That's what all the bass players say. But I'm looking forward for this album being done. It's been kind of lingering for a while, but I've really enjoyed playing guitar, and I'm so like, there's so much that real instruments kind of add to the vibe of the cue, you know. And I could even take everything like the bass plugins, and I bought Trillion, and I love Trillion, and it's great. Good job, Spectrasonics. But there's just something about that poorly played, because I'm no Jocko, but just I don't want to say poorly. I'm not going to beat myself up that bad. But an average, bass player sounds so much better than the best plugin, and there's just so much life to it. And I was showing my students earlier today at Full Sail, like what happens if we just mute out the guitars. Now, obviously the guitar parts go away, but when you turn them on, there's a lift, there's an authenticity, there's an energy that gets added to it. And, it's interesting that our topic today is how has the industry changed since you got into the industry? And I don't know if this has to do with the industry changing because, guitars and rock and everything, that was always a thing. But for me, really realizing how important playing live instruments in these cues are. And I think, I joined the industry in 2013. I really got pushed into it in 2014, starting to seeing placements in 2015. But 2013 is when I was like, you know what? Production music. I'm gonna go for it. And back then it was, plugins. If you buy some guitar plugins and Native Instruments with all of its, strummed acoustic and sunburst electric and all of those things, that was kind of the big deal. You buy the plugins and you program it, and I think that was okay, but I'm not sure that that's the case anymore.
Well, because it's so accessible to everyone, and it's easy to fake it, and I think library owners and companies, especially the high-end ones, they're not looking for any fake musicians, they want the real deal. Not that these pieces of technology aren't sounding great and the developers are doing an awesome job, because they are. I love Native Instruments, but to kind of fake a guitar, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to pull it off, especially if you have somebody with such a discerning ear as some of the library owners that I work with. It would be able to spot the fake right away.
I completely agree. And I feel like over the last 10 to 12 years that libraries are wanting and expecting more authenticity in the cues that are submitted. You know, I think 10 or 12 years ago, you probably could have gotten away with everything being MIDI, you know, and everything being programmed. But now, like you said, the tools are super accessible to everybody. And now I think it's expected, and it's certainly valued more. Not that it was devalued before, but would you kind of agree with that libraries are searching out for more authenticity in their cues?
I think so, definitely, especially since so many people could try to pass off those virtual instruments as being authentic. I don't think you're going to pass muster with companies that had the higher standard.
Yeah, and everybody has the same tools. So if you have, you know, strummed electric or sunburst, a strummed acoustic or sunburst electric from Native Instruments, then everybody has those plugins. Same with like the damage drums and the damage loops. I love damage. It's still one of my go-to big kind of cinematic drum libraries. But you know, just earlier today we were at a feedback session. I'm like, there's damage.
Yeah,
and I'm like, it's good, but I've kind of heard it a lot.
Well, I would say that for damage 1, yes, but do you have damage 2?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. There's some good stuff, and you can tweak the sounds even more so than damage 1. It was like pre-recorded loops or whatever. It's like similar to what you can find on Splice, I guess. But damage 2, there's so much you can manipulate and create your own thing with the tools on there. That's what I find anyway.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but there's just even damage 2 has like a damageness, you know what I mean? Like it still sounds like damaged drums. That heaviosity, big room, big kind of, it still sounds damagey. I don't know how else to describe it. But even if it's damaged 2, and I don't know what the solution is there. I don't think it's going and getting a bunch of taiko. I don't think that's the answer. Maybe layering or something, or finding new ways. But that's, you know, I think that's one way that the industry has changed in the last, you know, 10 to 15 years, that there is a higher premium on recorded and played instruments. And I think that's also showing up with like vocal stuff is getting more and more popular.
Yeah. So remember we were talking to Farnell from Marmoset, and we were doing like a Q&A song review, and
at the end of December,
one of the cues popped up, and he was able to pinpoint a sample. He knew it right away. He was like, I've heard that sample before, so I know exactly what that is. So I think a lot of companies, like, they listen to thousands of songs every day, maybe. So they So they've heard all the splice loops already, and you know, you try to give them that, they're like, oh, okay, this guy's just, you know, putting loops together. They know.
Yeah. And Farnell like knew the trumpet player that recorded that library. He's like, oh yeah, that's Bob. It wasn't Bob. I forget his name, but yeah, me and Bob used to hang out, you know, and that's his trumpet tone. He recognized the tone. He knew exactly who it was. And Farnell, some of these guys have amazing ears. And so if you are bringing something and if you're not changing it around or recording your own thing, then I don't know. It's not that it sounds bad. It's just somebody who does record their own thing is going to have an edge. It's going to be something that they haven't heard before versus the same trumpet libraries, the same damage loops, or the same guitar phrases from Native Instruments. And that's not even saying the challenge of making those things sound believable. It just in general, the authenticity to it, but just kind of how played out, I guess they are. Yeah. You know, and I hear my fair share of the same kind of libraries from Full Sail students. Like they'll bring a cue in, and I swear to everything good and holy, if I hear like, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, another time, right? That's the, I think it's called like gospel vocal samples or something like that, gospel vocal effects. And man, I'm over it. And I get it. You get Logic, you load it up and like, wow, this sounds great. It does sound great. But I am tired of it to the point where I hear it, I got an eye roll and go, oh, okay, this again.
Because thousands of other composers have access to this stuff.
Yes,
So you
exactly.
have to have some sort of individuality when you're like making art, you know?
Yeah. And that's not even talking about like AI and the advantage and the authenticity that a recorded instrument and an original, let's say unique type sound has over AI, because AI can only iterate on what has already existed. And I think, the human spirit has a bottomless well of creativity, and to be able to create connections that probably the AI won't be able to do anytime soon. And so, yeah, I think that's some one way that the industry has changed since we got started. Now, when did you start in the industry? I started around 2013. Jeff, how long have you been focusing on production music?
Well, in 2021, I signed my first sync deal with one publisher, and I did 2 albums for them that year. So I ended up signing 20 cues in 2021. 2022 is when I started taking it really seriously. And I think I signed with like 5 more libraries that year and wrote over 200 cues, or signed over 200 cues that year.
That's intense,
so
man.
I guess that would be my first real year where I was really taking it like uber seriously. So this is, I guess, would be my 5th year, just starting out my 5th year. Yeah.
Yeah, you've done really, really well in that amount of time, especially, having a full-time job and all of that as far as your placements and your output. And so the line is always going up and to the right. So good job, man. Let's see some other ways that the industry has changed. One thing that you mentioned, that libraries are getting more picky, that it's a little bit more difficult to get into. Once upon a time, the Pond 5s and the Audio Jungles and all that kind of stuff, you could about just back a dump truck of GarageBand beats and stuff like that and get into Pond 5. And I imagine maybe you still can't do that. Don't know how much money you're going to make. No, I'm not throwing any shade to Pond 5. It's just AI has really come for that segment of the industry. But libraries getting a little bit pickier. Why do you think that is, Jeff?
Well, I think they have to be, because there are so many more composers that have access to the same tools. And kind of like what we talked about before, if everybody has the ability to create good music, they want great music. If everybody has the ability to create great music, they're going to want phenomenal music. If everybody has the ability to create phenomenal music, then they're only going to want top-notch, like top-shelf stuff. So, and also, like, the really established libraries, the top-tier libraries, I think their catalogs are very big now. So they may have enough tension. They may have enough hip-hop. They may have plenty that's still getting placements year after year. So they might not need a new batch of that as often. Whereas 10 years ago, they were taking a new batch of that maybe every week or every month. Now, maybe a library would replenish their tension once a year, so they have to be more picky.
Yeah, I agree. And that feels like it's in contrast to how many more libraries there are. Just 10 years ago, 12, 15 years ago, it wasn't like it is now. There wasn't kind of a new library popping up. There were the bigs, the Warner Chappells, the APM, the Five Alarms, the Extreme, did I say Universal? Like they're the big boys, right? But there wasn't a bunch of small libraries. And that was, in my opinion, that was because the tools to function as a library weren't as democratized. And especially the rise of catalog software. Our CBS publisher, when I first started, he had a website, yes, but he wasn't on Source Audio or Disco or anything like that. He was still quite literally FedExing thumb drives up to the network when I started in 2013. Like there was no real crafter. There was no like I said, Source Audio, where a client, a network, whatever, music supervisor goes in, catalogs, views it, and then downloads it. No, he had the relationship with the network, and he would run to Kinko's, not FedEx, but Kinko's, and drop a thumb drive with all of our music and overnight it, FedEx it, overnight it to the network. They would take it, they would put it into their internal system. Now, I'm not saying like, I was thinking SoundMiner or SoundMouse or Source. It's not like those things didn't exist, but it certainly wasn't as broadly used as it is now. Or you had these really complicated, overly complicated backend that was just publisher facing, right? It was never meant to go up on a website or whatever. It was never meant to be public facing. It was inside baseball, right? It was industry tools that other industry people used. It didn't need to look flashy. And so I think that's something that has really changed. As composers, we have technology that helps us write better, helps us mix and master. I do everything in headphones. I've talked about that because the tools are so good, and it is relatively inexpensive to get a DAW and start making music. Grab a guitar, get a $100 SM57 off Amazon, and you're kind of in business. But before, for composers, the technology was much more expensive. The equipment was much more expensive. Learning how to use it was much more difficult because there weren't as many people like us talking about it. But for libraries, the distribution tools were much different. But now that it's easier for a library to get a Source Audio or a Disco subscription and start kind of pitching, that's really made the independent music catalog blow up. So many more independent libraries.
So many more. And, when you think about it, every time there's a composer that finds some good success, they're going to start building their connections and building their network. Eventually, that composer is going to start thinking, well, if I had a whole team of writers, I could triple or, multiply my income by 10 times or 20 times. I'll just feed the connections and my network music from my whole team as opposed to just me. So it's a natural progression for a composer when you achieve a certain degree of success to have that thought cross your mind.
I mean, dude, that's quite literally part of the genesis of the briefing room. Was I had briefs from my publishers that I just didn't physically have the time, like, to write, and they were insatiable. They couldn't get enough, and so I thought, I can't make more hours in the day, but what I could do is make more Daves in the world. So, taking the brief and kind of coaching and mentoring folks and, getting a slice of publishing or getting co-write or whatever, and kind of cloning myself. And that sounds like everybody's just like ghostwriting. That's not at all what's happening, but it definitely kind of has the DK stamp, right? I think there's a certain vibe to it. And I think anybody who is a apprenticing or mentoring with somebody, their musical DNA is going to get on you, and so that's more what's happening. But that's how the briefing room started. And before we ever made it like a subscriber benefit and everything, it was a handful of folks. I was like, some people I know who write, who work and are ready to kind of do more. But then it blew up into what is now the briefing room, and that's started spilling over into the Sync Accelerator. It's all connected. So finding folks who can help me hit my deadlines, but while also giving them experience, giving them back-end royalties, getting them placements. And so as far as I'm concerned, it's a win-win-win.
Yeah.
It's a win for the composer because they get cues written, they get on TV, they get credits, they get royalties. It's a win for the publisher because they now have exponentially more cues to go into their catalog. And it's a win for me because I get to do what I do. I get to mentor and coach folks. I get a little bit of back end as kind of a producer type of a role. And I'm able to position folks into the success that I've achieved. And that makes me very, very happy. It's part of why I do what I do as a teacher. And as a teacher yourself, I'm sure you can relate to that.
No, I mean, there's a lot of successful composers that are like OG Taxi members that have now have like really good libraries. They're smaller boutique libraries, but the reason why they're successful is because they, for a long time, were the go-to composers, and they built up the network, and they have showrunners that are still good friends of theirs. The scary part about that is like, anybody that has a fair amount of placements could start a library and say, oh, these are my library's placements, but they were really just your own placement, you know? So it's like, if there's thousands of these little small libraries that pop up from every composer that had even a little bit of success, like, you might get signed to that library, but your music might end up sitting for a few years before that composer that started the library builds up their network to the ability to provide shows with music every day, because the big guys are doing just that. They're giving their catalog to multiple shows, you know, per day probably. And
they have like sales teams, right? They have people whose entire job is to sell their catalog. You've got people whose entire job, like Farnell is an A&R person with Marmoset, right? He's not pitching necessarily. His job is to onboard and bring in new talent and bring them up to speed and kind of keep his ear to the ground, you know. Meanwhile, you have some libraries who are just like one or two people. They don't have a sales team. And like you said, it might be their catalog that they've put their, you know, thousands of cues into a catalog and said, here is our catalog, and then looking to bring on composers.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's stopping me from doing that right now and saying, oh, I have a brand new library and here's all my placements for the, you know, 1,500 placements for the past 4 years. A new naive composer might say, oh, I'll give that new library music, but really, like, what am I going to do? Like, give it to my libraries? And how does that work?
Yeah, that's a
become
really
a middleman, you know. I'll take half of your writer's share if you sign with my library. You know, it doesn't work. So it is scary out there right now, because you never know the credibility of who you're giving your music to. And that, I think, is like the major selling point of Taxi. For those of you who are like on the fence about Taxi, Dave, you know, I'm a strong believer in Taxi. They vet those libraries like crazy to make sure that they're legit, and it's not just a composer team that just happens to have some personal placements, you know?
Yeah, but also it's kind of a double-edged sword, because on one hand, you don't want to just keep pumping out tracks to a library who really doesn't have the ability or the network or the relationship to get you placements. But on the other hand, there's something to be said about getting on the ground floor of a library who is up and coming. I've got some stuff over there in InStyle Music. Shout out to Pedro and George up there in Canada, and they were relatively new when I got signed with them, and I think that was a taxi connection. Vetted, they're legit, but they were still early.
Yeah.
But when you get in on kind of on the ground floor, then you can be one of their go-to people. I have a buddy of mine who writes for Atrium Music, and he was one of their first like 10 or 15 writers, and he gets a ton of love. And he, knows the CEO like personally and all this kind of stuff. And he got in on the ground floor. Some of the folks who are most successful in Pond 5 or Motion Array or Artlist, they're the ground floor people, the people out there at the beginning. So it's kind of a balance.
Yeah, you really never know. It could be a one composer team that eventually in another 5 years is going to be working with 1,000 television shows.
Yep.
Well, you do have to wait the 5 years of thinking, oh man, my music is just sitting on the shelf. But then as the placements start, then they build up. You're like, oh, thank God I gave them my music.
Right.
It's a toss-up.
But my advice would be not to, if it's a new library or it's an untested library, my advice would be to not flood their inbox with everything that you write. Right? Kind of treat it like fishing, where you are, let's use a different analogy. Let's do ice fishing. I've never been ice fishing in my life, but I've seen it on TV. The idea, you cut the hole, you drop the line, and if they're not biting, then just go cut another hole in the ice and drop another line. But once they start biting, then you make the hole bigger and you put as many lines in the water. But what can be really, really tempting, especially if maybe you're kind of on that taxi grind, where you're getting forwards, but you're not getting any placements, getting forwards, not getting any placements. And then you might get a sign, and then you're like, finally, I got signed. And then you're like, yes to everything. You give them absolutely everything, but then it takes time because maybe they're new. And so my recommendation would be to put a couple of lines in the water, and then a couple of lines in the water over here. And then when something starts biting, then just absolutely chum the waters, man. Just dump everything in and feed that library that is getting you placements until they say stop. Meanwhile, you're over here still fishing and still dropping lines in the water to try to create that relationship dynamic with another library. So on one hand, established libraries are getting pickier, and they might be tougher to get into, especially if you're going up against folks who have been at it a while, who know their process, who can do it quickly, who maybe play real instruments, who don't use the same tools, because you are going against those people. When you if you submit your cue up to Extreme Music, for example, you are literally going up against Hollywood composers with access to real orchestras. We're running a sync accelerator briefing room. I forget, it's kind of blurry right now. And there are a couple of live trumpet. There are a couple of cues that have live trumpet, which sound amazing. And it kind of ruins the MIDI trumpet for everything else that's going to be on that record, which is no fault to the MIDI guys. But once you hear that live trumpet, the bar gets set. So on one hand, libraries are getting pickier. On the other hand, it's never been easier or more inexpensive for a library to come up and jump into the library business. And so we should be picky when we consider who we're giving our cues to, right? They don't have to be super precious, right? Because we're artisans, but I mean, don't give it away. Don't give it away. Let's see. Some other things. What are some other things that you saw, how the industry has changed since you joined, Jeff?
Well, I think the advent of social media and the need to have an online presence and an attractive online presence, I should say, is super important. Because libraries don't want to work with anybody that they don't enjoy, anybody who's going to like put down other composers or be negative or criticize libraries and things like that. It's like if you're posting on a Facebook group and you come across as arrogant or, not very nice to work with, there are company owners on those groups, then they will recognize your name when they get the pitch in an email or submission form. And if something goes off in their mind, like, oh, that's the guy that was insulting on that Facebook post that I just saw, I'm not even going to click on the email. Well, if you are supportive and helpful and generous with your time and treat others with sincere respect on these social media platforms, the library owners also take note of that. And they're like, oh, yeah, this is a really reputable guy. And I've seen his posts and he's a stand-up composer. At least they would be more apt to click on the email from somebody that they associate positivity with, as opposed to somebody who's been negative.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you bring that up because I have experienced this firsthand. If you remember, a few years ago, I was doing my year of taxi, and part of the reason I needed to kind of step back from that is I was kind of, I'm trying to think of the best way to say that. I was kind of putting myself out there, and as we were following along, the taxi submissions, and I had said some things that weren't necessarily inflammatory about like libraries' ability to follow up with forwards. Whether it was accepted, whether it was heard, whether it was returned or whatever, what is commonly known as, as like kind of the black hole. Like you submit it and you just don't really know. And I know that that's just part of the business, right? That's just how it goes. But I had said, surely libraries can kind of figure out a way to kind of bridge that gap. And I don't know if I've talked about this on the show. It kind of ruffled some feathers, man. Some of the libraries, I think, felt like I was calling them out, and it started to create some friction for Dave, the composer, versus Dave, the YouTuber. Just whatever amount of internet notoriety I have as a YouTuber and a podcaster was enough for libraries to kind of know who I was and then associate me with griping about their workflow. And so that was part of why I stepped back from the year of taxi. In addition to just having the bandwidth to do it and not just continuing on because I said I would to the internet, right? And so you can go back and listen to Year of Taxi from, I think that was 2022. I think I did that.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you if I might revive the Year of Taxi, because I think I'm still a member for I think I renewed for 2 years. So if you're okay with me kind of
are we doing the son of Year of Taxi?
We would have to check with Michael, I think, right? To see if he would be okay with it.
I mean, he was totally up for it. And for you, as somebody who is still very much kind of in the taxi ecosystem, and you've been on Taxi TV, I think we talked about this last week. I'm down with that. If you want to revive the Year of Taxi and kind of give us an update I am completely down with that.
I think it would be helpful because, the 52 Qs and taxi do kind of overlap. We have many members who are coming to 52 Qs and asking about their taxi submissions and how could I improve
Yeah,
it before I submit it for this listing. And it just works to have that carryover because Mike Alaska, he really truly cares about this industry and the
I
composers,
agree.
and he has such a good heart for him to put aside as much time as he does to helping his members. The guy deeply cares about what he does. So
Yeah, yeah, and he is a very earnest person.
yeah,
I've met him several times. He was in Orlando a few years ago, and we had dinner at our favorite restaurant. And just a very, very genuine person. And I'll argue with anybody who tries to like say that like taxis a pay to play and anything. No, it's legit. It is not without its challenges.
frustrations, of course. Yeah, it could be frustrating
Yeah.
to not hear back, but then when you do hear back and you get an email saying, "Oh, we would like 20 songs from you and we're going to pay you $200 each." It's like, whoa, okay,
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I have relationships with libraries right now that are a direct result from Taxi. So I can't argue with the results, right?
Yeah, I think over half of my libraries are through Taxi, whether it be just networking on the forums or from forwards. Those library owners are very connected to Taxi. So the way you conduct yourself on the Taxi forums as well. Like I know several composers that have gotten signed just because they've been so nice to other people on the Taxi forum.
Yeah. There's I've got a library deal and some placements and cues from a guitarist who met me on the forums over there, and we collaborated, and now I'm in this library because of him. It wasn't even a brief. It was just over there on the forums. And you're right, there is a ton of overlap. Very fundamentally different kind of business models, right? While there's overlap, it's not a competition. The briefing room does not exist to supplant Taxi. We are mentoring and coaching, and the briefing room exists to help point energy, point people's writing process at a real target, right? But, and I've said this before, don't come and join 52 Qs because you want the briefs. No, go do Taxi or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what that would look like, even if it's kind of creating or reviving the year of Taxi space. If you want to like commit to writing a Taxi brief every week and sending it up and tracking it, and the whole impetus for Year of Taxi was to follow Taxi submissions over the course of an entire year, and at the end of the year say, I wrote 52 Qs. This many got forwarded, this many got returned, this many got signed, this many got placed, so that you have 52 data points.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if I'm
that's
gonna
something
do it,
you're into,
I would probably want to follow my own rules instead of doing it that way, because, and Michael will tell you the same thing. If you force yourself to write a cue every week, even though you might not even have a brief that's right for you, you're kind of wasting your own time. Like, you should only write to the briefs that you think you could really, really nail, that suit your style. So I think if there's one week that just nothing catches my eye as something that I feel confident about, I just wouldn't submit anything to Taxi that week.
Okay.
And then I could probably just come on and do videos and keep it casual and say, here's what happened with Taxi this week. And
dude, let's talk about it. I'm down with that. My membership has long since lapsed, but yeah, I'm down. I'm down with it, and I still have all the artwork and everything. So
yeah,
I was really, really proud of that artwork.
When it comes to the briefing room stuff, I mean, we work with different libraries, just like Jesse Josephson. He has his buddies' libraries that are different from the briefing room, that are different from Taxi. There's another community like Stephen Biddle probably has some libraries that he's connected to for his community members.
Yeah, and like Sync
Saint
Titans and
Titan,
stuff, I
exactly.
think.
Like
Yeah,
Michael and Jody, I think.
I think that sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those guys like have shows that they work with, and those are again different from Taxi, different from the briefing. There's enough libraries for everyone.
Yeah.
We don't
I
have to
completely
compete
agree.
with each other.
So yeah, having online presence, I did an episode a while back, like, do you need a YouTube channel? I don't think you need to be a YouTuber, but I think having a channel where you can post your stuff, along with like LinkedIn, I think is super important. I know you might eye roll LinkedIn, but man, there are so many music supervisors and library owners out there in LinkedIn talking about their stuff. Farnell, the interview I did with Farnell, the interview I did with Warner Chappell. I've got another Warner Chappell interview coming up. We've got an interview with Randon Purcell, who's an amazing trailer composer. Those were all LinkedIn connections.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, Randon, man, love what you do. Want to come on the podcast? Yeah. Oh, want to do a workshop? Yep, coming up. And so that's all LinkedIn.
Yeah, I've definitely signed to some libraries because of LinkedIn, and just the way you conduct yourself is super important,
Yeah, you mentioned Facebook groups, and never forget several years ago, man, this was probably 7 or 8 years ago, there's a Facebook group called Perspective, which is a film composing, film scoring Facebook group that is that has some very, very heavy hitters, some Hollywood people. Richard Kraft, who is like one of the A-list composer agents in Hollywood, and Hans Zimmer, like, will go in and chime in. And I'll never forget, like, somebody was kind of throwing shade at Hans Zimmer, I don't think realizing that Mr. Zimmer is in this group. And he kind of chimed in and he said, like, well, it didn't really bother me when I was, winning Grammys and Oscars. So before you go into a Facebook group and start dumping on the library, just know that what you're doing is you're telling the world, like, hey, I never want to work for this person ever again. And I don't know, man, I think it kind of makes you look small, like, to go on there and like dump on somebody or crap on them. I don't know. I don't have space in my life for that.
No, it is
the world is frustrating enough as it is.
It doesn't make sense. If you don't have anything nice to say, just keep your keyboard unplugged.
Yeah. And there are, looking at some other like very prominent software developers, plugin manufacturers who stepped on a hornet's nest, or I guess hit a hornet's nest with social issues, and then ended up getting kind of unceremoniously removed from the company that they help build. I don't want to name any names or whatever, but if you know, just no, that you don't need to go there. You don't need to go there. Let's see. Some other things that have changed over the course of the 10 to 12 years that I've been in the industry. And this is a really, really important one. And what you're watching right now is an example of this, which is more folks are talking about the industry. It used to be that production and library music, first of all, the word library music was kind of said like as a pejorative, right? To despair it, like, it's just library music or muzak, and it was seen as somehow kind of less than, I think. And I actually have a publisher who, like, you're not a production music, like, quit calling it library music, you're a composer. And I think his heart is to, like, don't belittle your work, but I don't necessarily see production music as any kind of pejorative. But all that to say, now so many people are willing to share their experience, share their wisdom, their expertise. It's what we're doing right now. The 52 Qs Facebook group started because I couldn't find a specific production music community. yes, there were courses and that kind of thing, but kind of not what we're doing here, right? And so the Facebook group started, I think, in 2019, and just it's like I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see in the world. And so I started the Facebook group, turned into a Patreon, turned into a Mighty Network. Fast forward, here we are some years later with over 1,000 members in the community, and the family and friends, and it's absolutely amazing and floors me every time I think, just the fact that, Jeff, you're sitting here right now as a result of that community. But even before me, there was like the OG. There was Jesse and Sync My Music. He was kind of the OG YouTuber talking about sync licensing. There was Nick Murray. I don't know if he's a YouTuber who did a lot of trailer. Everything that I know about trailer music, I learned from Nick, because he was out there just talking about trailers. Now, his channel is gone now. I don't know what he's up to. I hope he's okay. I've not seen him in forever. But there's also, Christian Henson, Marlon Gibbons, there's Stephen Bedall, there's Eric over at Make Music Income. There are the cat's out of the bag, the secret of sync licensing and library music, but there are so many more communities, groups, YouTube channels. It's no longer kind of this industry secret, what production and library music is.
I think that's a big difference, because when I started, I think it was mostly just Jesse and you that kept on popping up on my notifications. I'm sure there were others. It's just those were the ones that I kept on seeing on the sidebar on YouTube for whatever reason.
Right.
But now there's just so many. It's a little overwhelming, right? And and you gotta wonder, do we have YouTube personalities teaching about sync licensing that don't have the placement or level of success to back it up? Who am I getting advice from here? Would I want somebody like Mark Cragen or Russell Howard who have get 1,000 of placements every week to start a YouTube channel? Yeah, of course. But they don't, because they're busy writing music. That's what they do. Right. We have so many awesome personalities. I don't know if you know, I think his name is Andrew Hind, who is really, really good.
Yeah.
I love watching his videos. Just has a calm demeanor, and you can tell he's very honest about things. Mm-hmm. A younger guy, Randy McGravy, he's really good. He gets on and talks about his royalties very bluntly, name drops his libraries.
Is he the dude with the really heavy Boston accent? Is that him? Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I know exactly. I was watching a video of his yesterday.
He's actually in my area within an hour from me, and he performed.
Oh, man.
So I think I'm probably gonna show up at one of his gigs one time. And,
dude, that's watching him is I've got to, okay, can I do a Boston accent? Boston, I'm gonna look at my royalty statement here, and we're gonna check it out and see how it went. How was that Boston accent?
Not very good, man.
Okay, no, okay.
But I'm glad you know who I'm talking about, because he's one of my favorite ones. But my point is, there's just so many of them, and I think you have to kind of find your tribe. Who do you resonate with? Because even Clint, his channel is awesome, and he listens to cues on his lives, and that's great. I just don't have time for all of them, because I would never get to write music anymore.
Yeah. I agree. And that's really good advice as far as check into if you are looking to really follow someone, and if you're booking a coaching call, or if you are giving anybody any money, check into them. Because not only, they could have something good to say, but can they kind of back it up, and can they sustainably back it up? Because, I got to say, since I've been doing this, I've seen some communities kind of come and go. especially those that kind of popped up in the height of COVID because we were all locked up. And, that's part of what really blew the lid off of sync licensing, all these film composers and performers looking for ways to make money making music. And so they kind of turned to film and TV. Sync licensing was a way to do that. And they popped up communities and mentoring, and like these crazy, like $3,000 coaching calls and all that kind of stuff. And I'm including myself in this, right? If you are ever looking to subscribe at 52Qs, I encourage you to Google me, check my IMDb, and if I am not your person, if I am not the tribal elder of the tribe that you want to join, then don't join. I'm totally okay with that. Jesse over at Sync My Music, his vibe, he's a really cool guy, but it's not really kind of my kind of vibe. That's okay. That's completely okay. Some of the other communities like Sync Beast, I'm just not. It's just not my vibe. And I've seen podcasts come and go, and
yeah. And I mean, YouTube is a way to make some money. And
Yep.
There's an opportunity that some composers see. They're like, okay, well, a lot of people are trying to get into sync. Maybe I'll start a YouTube channel about it. And maybe they only have 10 placements, but the viewers don't know that. I will see a YouTuber on there and they say, oh, I just got my first royalty statement and it was $380. And my first thought is, well, I made more than that this quarter, and I don't have a YouTube channel, But then I think about my first one that was only like $3, and I'm thinking, okay, well, if their first one was $300, another couple of years they're going to be, well over 5,000. So maybe I will listen. I wish there was a way to see somebody's credentials,
Yeah, I mean, that's why, I think IMDb is really important, LinkedIn, or just kind of Google them, and I encourage you can head to my IMDb. I think my link's in the description, and it doesn't have everything because there are a lot of shows that don't show up on IMDb, especially a lot of live sports, but there's quite a lot there. And the reason I put those up there is, if I'm being honest, probably a little bit of vanity and ego, but also because it is a way to credential what I am selling. Not to put too fine a point on it. Like, I'm encouraging folks to come spend $20 a month or $50 a month to join the subscriber tiers. And I take that responsibility very seriously. And my credentials are in the placements. Yeah. The YouTube channel. If you resonate with who I am as a person, my whole vibe, if you can't stand to watch the white glasses, probably going to be some tough sledding for you, right? And so part of the reason I keep up my YouTube channel, part of the reason I will put my cues on YouTube so you can see them into the sessions. Part of the reasons I do my IMDb is so that you know who I am, and that I do have some walk to back up the talk. Okay, so if you are looking to kind of hitch your wagon into a community or into a personality or a mentor, first of all, make sure that they resonate with you. Second of all, make sure that they are who they say they are, and that they can kind of back it up. Especially, hear me, folks, especially if they're asking you for money. I've seen too many hustle culture-y type of self-help guru type people kind of come and go and charge exorbitant amounts of money. And each one of those is an investment. And you got to ask yourself, are you going to get a return on that investment? So yes, more people are willing to share their wisdom. It's never been easier to learn about this industry, but that also means that there are folks out there who might not quite be qualified. I hope that's okay to say. The last thing I'll say about it is this: beware the person giving you a gold mine whose real business is selling shovels. Like that's how they're making their money. And then the final thing that I want to talk about of what's really changed in my time here is the number of placements, the number of shows. I think we're really in a new golden era of TV as the cinema kind of dies a slow, painful, corporate merger death. The small screen TV is blowing up.
So many shows.
Tons of streaming. And tons of new networks. So every time, I hear, this is a brand new streaming platform, or this is a brand new show on streaming, you might roll your eyes, but it all needs music. And the vast majority of those types of shows, unscripted reality TV, they need production and library music because they don't have a huge budget. But the downside is that I think that overall, royalties are kind of going down. Network is still the king of royalties. If you get network primetime, if you get the AFC Championship playoff placement, then that's going to hit harder and get you more royalties than a placement on like Black Ink Crew or Dr. Pimple Popper.
Yes, all those NFL Sunday, the pregame show with our iRobot cue.
iRobot, yeah.
It's like every time it's like, woohoo, because that's a big chunk of money every time it plays, and it plays every week.
Yeah. Yep. It plays pretty much every week, man. But even though there are exponentially more opportunities, I think each of those placements, because of the stratification of viewership, when you only had 3 channels, or if you only had 200 channels, the eyeballs were concentrated on fewer channels.
Yeah. So if you have your queue on, let's say, Bravo, for instance, 5-10 years ago, they would rerun that episode 20, 30, 40 times within a 3-year span, and every time you would get paid for that. Now they'll show it maybe once or twice on Bravo, and then it goes right to their streaming service. So anybody that wants to watch that rerun can watch it anytime they want, forever. So they don't need to keep on rerunning them on their cable network. They just bump it right to their streaming platform. And what do I get? 0.1 cent for a streaming, is that going to change? Because now that the streaming services have to show commercials, or a lot of them are showing commercials now, will the streaming money increase now or not?
I think the only way that increases is if the government gets involved. Like, the reason that networks pay more is because the FCC here in the US requires terrestrial network television to report their numbers. They are required by law to report on the number of viewers who watch, and that data gets used to tabulate royalties. However, cable networks and especially streamers are not required at all to report their numbers. How many eyeballs watched this? So we are all at the mercy of whatever figures they just happen to give us, and we're just kind of trusting that it's going to work out. But same with like Spotify and even Apple Music to a lesser degree. But until reporting is compulsory, we're kind of at their mercy. And I don't know, man. On one hand, it is the golden era of TV, a new golden era, because it's just, there's never been more opportunities. But on the other hand, it's never paid less per placement, which is a real kind of cognitive dissonance.
Now with Netflix, don't they report the number of viewers to the PROs? Because if you get a Love Is Blind placement, that's going to be a lot more than, let's say, a show that's not very popular, right?
They don't give us their actual viewer data. They just give us, and and by us, I mean the PROs, and even this, their algorithms they're all considered trade secret. So we're just taking their word for it, but it's not like viewership, like Nielsen data that the networks have, that the big channels have, which is why network pays so much more. And some of it is what you were saying, the stratification, Bravo, like how many eyeballs are watching it. You can say, if I put something out on TV and I can say 40 million people watched this at once because it was happening live in real time. However, when it goes out on streaming, how many? I doubt 40 million people are going to watch an episode of Ice Road Truckers.
No.
Or a rerun of Temptation Island. And so we're just kind of trusting them. And I don't know how long that's going to last. I don't know how long that's tenable. I don't know how long we can keep just trusting that it works, because this is part of why writers went on strike and actors went on strike, was for streaming royalties. But unfortunately, composers don't have a union.
Yeah.
Do you know why composers don't have a union?
I don't.
We don't have a union because unions can only unionize if they are considered employees. And after writers' unions, this is my understanding, writers' unions and actors' unions came about because when an actor gets hired on a TV show, they get paid as employees of that production company. They're not like freelancers. But legislation was passed that kept composers and songwriters from actually being employed by a production company. So if I get hired on a film score to score a film, I am a contractor, not an employee. And because I'm a contractor, I can't unionize because contractors can't unionize. That's why we don't have a union and probably never will. Now we have musicians unions, that's more like for like performing, like live performance. But as far as actual unionization and being able to go on strike and have collective bargaining, the closest thing we have is going to be something like the PMA, which is why it's so important to have some kind of entity working on our behalf to the government and with the PROs and that kind of thing.
If the composers are separate from the libraries in this conversation, like a composers union probably wouldn't be able to have much power anyway, even if we did, because let's say we're all going to go on strike. Okay, we're not going to write any more music and provide to television shows. Well, all the shows already have like hard drives full of music anyway, and they're going to still be able to have musical content in their shows with all of the music that was written previous to the strike. So I'm not sure it would even work.
Yeah, but usually when like writers go on strike and act, it shuts down production. Like the writer strike shut down production. Like you can't do anything. You couldn't do anything with scripted or anything at all, which is why like all this kind of improv stuff started popping up during that time. And so I don't know, because we don't have a union, we can't kind of predict what a strike would do in this situation. But in the meantime, we're getting kind of pennies on the dollar for our work. So that's something I've really seen changed, which is why we have to have so many different cues in so many different places, making us $50 here, $1.50 here, $200 there, so that altogether it makes a sustainable income. But that takes time, that takes a ton of output, and it's a slow burn, man. It's a very slow burn.
Because those big time placements are still out there too. Like you could randomly get a placement in a huge blockbuster movie, and the payout up front would be like 40 grand or so. Those are still looming out there,
and big trailer placements with, I think I did hear, I was talking to a music supervisor that said like the big 6-figure trailer placements are kind of dried up. I remember when I first got started, I pitched to a $150,000 placement. No, $175,000. It was together $350,000 placement. Half went to the library and the half went to the composer. So 175 grand. Those are pretty much gone.
Yeah.
But even still, I mean, I got this past royalty statement. I got a huge chunk, like $800 or something, from a placement in the Netherlands. I have no idea what that was, why it hit so hard, but it just did.
Yeah, the big money placements that I have the opportunities to write for, usually it's we need this by tomorrow morning at 8:00. So it's crazy. Like, the money is always related to the amount of time that you have to submit something. Yeah. That's
right. That $175,000 one, that was a 28-hour turnaround time, I think it was. Yep. But yeah, what about you? If you're watching or listening to this, and maybe you've been in the industry a minute or two, what's changed? How has the industry changed since you've been in? Maybe you're a real old timer and you've got a Rip Van Winkle beard, and you have you walk with a cane. And I remember back in my day, we had not CDs but vinyl. I mean, yeah, you want to talk about the industry changing. Technology and the internet completely rewrote how the library music industry works. Technology, sounds, plugins, computing power. This has all raised the bar in quality. It's lowered the gates of entry, and that means that we got to be better. Libraries get to be more picky. We also need to be a little bit more discerning when we're pitching our music. We need to make sure that we are out there putting positivity in the world, realizing that anything we say online is forever, including right here on YouTube. There are plenty of opportunities for us, but they might not pay as much as they used to per placement, which means that we need more. And finally, if you're gonna hitch your wagon to a mentor or a coach, there are more people out there who are talking about this industry. Just make sure that it's somebody who is a future version of you, who is where you want to be. Well, Jeff, thank you so much, man. Really, really do appreciate you hanging out with me here today. And for a back-to-back co-hosting gigs, appreciate you jumping in first. And by the way, let us know what you think of the new format. Do you like kind of the co-host dynamic? We're going to be bringing in different co-hosts here in the next few weeks. So not that I don't love you, Jeff, because I love you, but we got some other mentors we want to introduce you to. But please let us know in the comments below. Would absolutely love to hear from you. But that is going to do it for us this week. I hope you had an amazing week. And thanks a lot for listening here as we are episode 253. It is the second week of 2026. But that's going to do it for us. And I hope you have an amazing week. And just remember, friends, that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Qs podcast is copyright 2026 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community or becoming a member subscriber, head over to 52qs.com.